Hi, Jennifer Neal here for episode number 1 of Technology Road Mapping, where we are going to be talking about exactly what the heck technology road mapping is and 6 tips on how you can do it yourself.
Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your skills to the next level? Maybe start an online division of your business? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Technology Road Mapping, connecting the pieces of online and automation technologies for your business success. With your host, the business technology implementer, tech to entrepreneur translator, online sales and marketing strategist herself, Jennifer Neal.
Welcome to the first episode of Technology Road Mapping. And before I dive in too deep, I wanted to give you guys an idea why it is that I'm here talking about technology and your business and road mapping and kind of where that term came from and how it all came about. See, I grew up as a complete tomboy, all boy cousins, all boy brothers, everything, where I was playing with Matchbox cars, I was building with my erector set, I was always building things, I was always digging in and figuring things out, and I just loved that. And that trend just continued. And so when I got into junior high, and I know I'm reaching way back here, but when I got into junior high, we had this brand new computer lab of Mac Classics. It was a little iMac Classic, like the little box with the floppy disk drive. Yes, floppy. And we also had awesome Adobe softwares, and it was PageMaker, Illustrator, and Photoshop version 1.0. And so I really took to these programs, and I just started playing a lot with like the design side of things, and I just started figuring out how much you could put drawings and design stuff digital, and at that time it was super cool to be able to do that, right? So I really got involved, and I ended up competing we had a program called Business Professionals of America, and in that I competed and I won the division of I think it was advertising strategies for business using graphic design elements. And so I did that section, and I won the state level my junior year and the national level my senior year. And so because of that, I came out of high school and I went right into college, and I was working as a graphic designer in various different businesses. So literally all I have done is starting off in marketing, and I started off in design with these companies, and I've really just figured out from using other people's dollars sometimes what works and what doesn't work. And so it's just been kind of a learning curve. And through that whole time, not only did I figure out that I could keep doing all of the fun design stuff, but that I also loved, so when the new website things came out, and that was all big and cool, I got really involved in HTML programming. And I challenged myself to build a good-looking website, all from just writing the HTML code. And now I look back and I think, what the heck were you doing? That's so stupid. But I did it. And so I started realizing that on one hand, I could dig into web code or analyzing how some advertising did and looking at the actual the detailed analytic parts, right? And then on the flip side, I could also just go real creative and get involved in, let's make this look awesome, or just design this logo or whatever. So I realized that I was using both parts of my brain, and that was a skill that not everybody had. And furthermore, what seemed like normal language to me, because I was immersed in it, depending on what side of my brain I was using, but what really seemed like kind of normal, I quickly discovered that was not. So us as entrepreneurs, we kind of have our own little language, and we talk about all these awesome ideas, and we have our own acronyms, and we're really good at starting sentences and then getting super distracted by another awesome idea that just came up and totally jumping past. And most of the time, we as entrepreneurs can follow that because we kind of have that creative sense and that urgency and just that sort of leadership to be able to figure out, I want to do this. I want to do this. And we don't necessarily think all the way through the details. And other people people who are still working corporate jobs, or even the technical people, don't always understand what the heck we're talking about. So it can be, we can say, I know what I want. I'll know it when I see it, right? Or I'm not entirely sure, just show me several options. Or I just want this, just make it happen, right? So I get that part. But on the flip side, I also understand designers and developers and people who are working on the technical aspect of our businesses and how they think as well. So I spent a lot of time working with developers, and they have their own language and actually kind of social environment as well. Most of them don't interact really well with people, and there's kind of, those one-word sentences or responses that you can get back, right? So I've kind of figured out how to talk to them and how to understand. And I understand the acronyms and the terminology and everything that they're using, but I also understand entrepreneurs. So what I figured out is that I have this really cool ability to be able to translate between entrepreneurese and geek. And that became kind of an imperative skill to be able to, whether it was me being the geek and working with my clients, or to be able to help our clients in finding the right support and the right tech help that they need, right? So I'm positioning myself as kind of understanding the technology, but making it accessible. And that's where all of this has come from. I'm one of those people that when a new software comes out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I dig in and want to figure out how to use it, and I will just immerse myself and figure it out, because to me, that's fun. I know to a lot of other business owners, that's painful and it's not something that you want to do, but that's why we have a service business. And so I understand how, I can look at, you say, I want to sell something online. Great. I know immediately all of the pieces that are going to have to start to be put together. And depending on the technology pieces you already have, how those items are going to fit together, what needs to talk to what, and how I'm going to piece those together to make it work for you. But that's also a skill that comes from being a translator. And so that's where this whole entire idea for all of these sessions have come from, is in really being able to share that skill and how I can see all of these different technology pieces and how they fit together. So that's what we're going to be talking about in perpetuity. We're also going to be bringing in new technologies. We'll be answering questions that you guys have. I just really want this to be open forum and make technology accessible for you so that your business can get ahead. That's what this is all about. Okay, the other thing that I want to share with you before we get started is the reasoning and the logistics and everything behind the name Formula Done. So yes, this is the Technology Road Mapping Show, but it's coming from my company, which is Formula Done. And so I just want to explain a little bit about that. See, when I first started this company over 15 years ago, I was super creative in the name. And at the time, my maiden name was Kane. And so the name of the business was Kane and Associates. And at the time, my associates were really just my cats. And that was kind of, I had a couple people I worked with and did different things, but it's super exciting. So a lot of creative work is what we did and things like that. And come to find out, not only does it sound super boring like a lawyer firm, but there actually, right here in Boise, Idaho, believe it or not, there actually is a lawyer's firm called Kane and Associates. So I started getting phone calls for people looking for the lawyers. I realized that probably need a little bit of a different name that's going to imply more of what it is that we do. And so here's the real story, the kind of straightforward story that I'll tell you. There's actually two sides to this story. So first of all, I wanted a name that really would imply that we have the experience, we have the know-how, we have that formula of knowing how it is to take what you're doing, your passion, what it is that you're building, creating, offering, selling, whatever, and put that together using technologies in a way that automates things, saves you time, and gets you the fastest path to the cash. And so there really is a formula for doing that. And I really wanted to have kind of a name of something that explains, here is this formula and we have it. And then in addition to that, that it was done for you services that we offer. So we actually do all of the implementation and all of those things. But that, I didn't want it just to ride along or something like that. It needed to imply that we were done. So when you put it together like that, the name makes total sense. Formula, marketing formula and everything, and done for you services. So that's kind of the real story. The flip side of the story, or maybe the real story, is that also in growing up and being exposed to cars and playing with my little Matchbox cars and everything, to growing up going to car shows and all these things, I also grew up around the racetrack. And so I actually met my husband drag racing. We were both drag racing. And so we're very into racing and cars and everything. And my very favorite sport right now is Formula One racing. And so I know it sounds maybe a little familiar to, or similar to, the name of the company that I picked, but there's no copyright infringement, so I just went for it. So that's also kind of where it came from, is a little bit of fangirl hitting there with Formula One. So and you will hear all the time that I make racing analogies and kind of references, but the thing is, it really fits, because even if you have we've probably all done this, you've bought some cool, awesome software or a tool or a resource or a training or something like that, and it's so exciting, and then it sits there on your shelf and doesn't really get used. And there's that term that people throw around about oh, so you bought the Ferrari, but you don't know how to drive it, or it's sitting in the driveway, it isn't getting around the track. And then also about putting you into the driver's seat of your business and getting you past that start line, getting you to the finish line. And so there's just so many analogies that really kind of fall right in line that I loved it. And so I just went with it. And that's where the name Formula Done came from. And that's why you'll hear me referring everything to racing analogies. All right, let's get started.
Have a question for your host of Technology Road Mapping, Jennifer Neal? Find her online at formuladone.com and on Facebook and Twitter at Formula Done.
Okay, here we go. Tip number 1 is start with your main goal. So for us, let's use an example. Let's use an example so we can walk through all of these tips together. The whole point of starting with just your goals, which sounds like a completely common sense way to start, and it is. And sometimes it's so simple that you can even jump right over it, right? So the most important thing is write down your goals, and then you can have a sub-goal or a couple of sub-goals. But this way you're always going to be focusing just on the things that are exactly what you're trying to do right now. And you're not going to get caught up in the minutia of all the other details and all the shiny, pretty, awesome things that can happen, right? So on my blog, I'm going to have each of these episodes posted. You'll be able to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, so you can pick your format, what you want to look at. And then I'll also have all of the handouts and resource links and things like that go along with each episode. So for this episode, I am going to have an actual example of our roadmap that we're going to build together. And so you'll be able to download that and reference it as we go together here. And then in addition, if you'd like to look at other common roadmaps that are standard funnels or online sales mechanisms or any of the other common things that we do a lot for our other customers, I have a set of technology roadmaps that you can download. And so you'll see that opt-in right there on the blog page as well. So got a little sidetracked. Let's get to it. So the the main goal, let's do an example of, let's say that you want to host a webinar and sell something online. Okay, so literally we're going to take a piece of paper, and at the bottom of it is our main goal, and we want to sell your main product. So for me, I like to draw little circles or boxes or whatever. So I'm gonna put a circle and say, sell something, sell my core product, my main product, whatever you wanna call it. And then up higher, our secondary goal is going to be hosting a webinar. But really, why do we wanna host the webinar? One, we want to sell our product to the people that are on the webinar. And two, another great reason to host a webinar is because you can attract new people who are interested in what you're wanting to do to your topic of interest, so that you have more people to sell to at the end of it, right? So chances are most of you probably have some sort of a list, even if it's just a stack of business cards from people that you've been networking with, or your list from being in business for 5 years or more. Either way, you're going to have a list. You're always looking to build that list and to grow to that list, because I'm sure you've probably heard it, and the money is in the size of your list. And that is true, because it all comes down to a numbers game. It's seriously what it comes down to. So we're going to do our selling something and our webinar, but our goal of the webinar is really to build your list, okay? So those are our two main goals. And that's it. That's as easy as step number one is. Focus on your main goals and write those down in the center of your paper. Those are your core objectives. Okay, here we go. Tip number 2. This is where you're going to identify your must-haves. And that means in order to accomplish the main goals that you just set out in step number 1, what are the things that you have to make that happen? So let's start working backwards. I like to do that a lot. Sometimes it seems to make things easier. Our end goal is we want to sell something. So do you have a way to sell it? Do you have a way to actually collect money? If not, you need to get some simple merchant account or something like that. Okay, then working backwards is to our webinar. Do you have a webinar software? Do you have a way to actually hold your webinar online? And it doesn't have to be a webinar software, remember. You can use things like GoToWebinar or Webinar Jam or AnyMeeting or Zoom, things like that. They range anywhere from free or $15 a month to $60 a month and $150 a month or on up. You can also do like Google Hangouts and stuff. Those are free, right? So it depends on where you're at in your business. So do you have a way to actually hold your webinar? Okay. Then the whole point of our webinar, our goal number 2, is to grow your list. So do you have a way to keep your list? Do you have like a CRM software, or some of you might even still be using Excel files? Do you have a place where all of those people live, and do you have a way to add people to that? And that's kind of a core basic. That one I definitely recommend you have. Most of you probably do. Again, I'm hitting kind of from basics all the way up. So you want to add people to your list. Now, how are you going to add them to your list? You need to have some way to get their information. So that generally means some sort of an online form. Do you have a way to build a form that will collect their information and put them onto your CRM software? And where is that form going to live? How are people going to get there? So working all the way backwards is, are you going to be sending Facebook ads? Are you going to be doing a Facebook post? You can be doing LinkedIn or Twitter or Pinterest, anything like that that's driving to those, maybe all of them. So you're going to want to map out on your little chart here where people are coming from. Where are you going to target where those audiences are coming from? And you're going to put in, here's your list of where people are going to opt into. So you have a way of capturing their information. And then once they get your information, then they're going to go to your webinar and and buy something. So we're going to get to kind of how those connect in detail here in the next step. But the point is here to make sure that you have must-haves, which are the things that have to happen in order for your goals to be accomplished. So we need to make sure those pieces are in line no matter what. All right, that's it. Okay, tip number 3. Here we go. This is where we are going to add the right track. See, race analogies. Okay, so in here what we're going to do is we are going to assume that anybody who comes in is going to follow the exact right path and get directly to where you want, and you're going to sell whatever it is that you're selling. So here's where we're going to start connecting all of these pieces on your roadmap. So when people first see what it is that you're talking about in networking, in emails, in social sharing, in your social advertising, whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to assume that they are going to say, hey, yes, I want this. So they're going to go right to your web form where you're going to collect their information. They are going to fill that out. Then that's going to put them onto your CRM software. And from there, you want to email them and say, hey, you're registered for this webinar. And so you're going to let them know, here's when it is, here's how you get in. You're going to give them the details on how to get into your webinar. And then, of course, you're going to send reminders and things like that. But our core information is, yes, they're going to opt in. Yes, they're going to say, I want to come to the webinar. Yes, you're going to send them information. They are going to show up to your webinar and be there with bright smiling faces. And they're going to stay the whole way through your webinar. And at the end of it, they are going to buy what it is that you offer them. So you're going to map out the yes, that is ultimately the path that you want to get people to. So you're going to keep that one as close to the core center as possible. And again, you'll be able to see this on the option that I have included in the downloads, but you'll see how these pieces all connect together. And this is our yes path. This is exactly the path that we want people to go down. And that's it. That's your next step. Okay, here we go. Step number 4. This is the step that always seems to trip people up. I don't care how experienced you are. This starts to map out the extra details that any great entrepreneur can get stuck in. So here's how we're going to get through them. First of all, we're going to look at our roadmap that we've already been working on, and we're going to start mapping out the no or alternate paths. So we already went through and said, if they say yes to everything, here's exactly the path they're going to take. Now, we're going to go through and map out, if they don't, then what am I going to do to try to get them back on track and ultimately get them back to that end goal? So let's start backwards again, okay? I told you I like to work backwards. So let's start with you make your sales pitch. They either can buy or not buy. So what happens if they don't buy? So you're going to put a no buying path. So maybe you're going to want to follow up with them by phone or by email or both. Maybe you want to send them a recording of the webinar that you did. Maybe you want to send them information on your product. Maybe you want to just introduce them more to you because maybe they're not ready to buy. So you'll want to put in, here's how I want to approach the people that, now we're on the yes path. So remember, these are the people that attended the webinar and then didn't buy, okay? So they have the webinar information, at least if they were there and paying attention, they should have it. So how do you want to talk to those people? How do you want to follow up? What's the best way that you can possibly get your sales offer in front of them so that they can make a decision, yes or no? And here's where you can say, okay, even if they say no, maybe instead of your core offer, there's a downsell offer. So possibly there's something else that you can do in there. And another way to sell them something that isn't necessarily the same offer that you had. So here's where you're going to start mapping out some of those details. And then let's move backwards. And if they registered for the webinar, they came in, they registered, and then they didn't show up. So if they didn't show up, chances are they aren't going to have the same type of information that you provided on the webinar because they weren't there to hear it. So do you provide a replay of the webinar? Possibly. You could also take your webinar and break it up into a 5-part video series that's 5 minutes a piece and deliver your information to them in that short way. Maybe you take the information that you talked about and put it into an infographic and say, hey, sorry you weren't able to attend. I'd like you to have this information anyway. Here you go. Here's a cool thing. Okay? That's a great way to still share information. And it's an alternative path, right? You can still get people engaged with your follow-up. And I know stats are crazy, and I will see if I can find the actual stat, but I think it's something like 60% of the people who initially say no to your offer will ultimately say yes sometime within that next year. That's a pretty large number, right? So it makes sense to stay in front of them. So think about the different ways that you can alter that path of if they say no to this, they say no to your initial, they didn't show up to the webinar. So how else are you going to get them the information? And then how are you going to get them back to your core sales? And if they still say no from your core sales, how are you going to ultimately keep them in the loop and see if you can sell them something else? So this is starting to make sense. We're just going to be mapping out all of these alternatives. And don't stifle yourself. Don't say, I don't know how to do that, or there's no way I can get all that done, because this is kind of the dreaming time. This is the time that you can put all of those pieces like out on paper. We're going to go back and pare everything back. So don't let this part stress you out. This is seriously where you get to have fun. And so let's move backwards again. So let's see, we sold people. They either attended or didn't attend. Okay, so what if, back from that, what if they didn't register for the webinar? Well, part of the reason that we want to have the webinar is because you want to build your list. So maybe they can't attend the webinar on that day and time, or maybe they just don't like webinars, or maybe they feel like it's some sort of a bait and switch. Something like that, because we're all starting to get trained on how these things work. I show up, I'm going to get pitched to, right? So consider on your opt-in, and a lot of you do this already, but maybe you offer them something else instead. So in the industry terms, it's called a lead magnet, and you can offer anything. Maybe it is a transcript of your webinar. Maybe it's a infographic explaining part of what you're going to be talking about on your webinar. Maybe it's just like a checklist of here's the 10 things to avoid in order to not whatever it is that you are helping them to overcome. So this gets into marketing strategies, and I know that's not exactly what we're here for. So consider though that you can give them something else and then either automatically register them, or on the page where they would go to download or get a copy or start the series or whatever it is that they're going to do to get that free information, offer them, hey, by the way, I'm doing this webinar that's talking about exactly this same thing. So if you'd like to attend or would like to receive a recording of the webinar, here's how to get that. And give them, so you've already given them something before you're asking them to do the webinar. Typically, that method tends to increase not only webinar registrations, but also show-ups. So it's a great way to grow your list even more. And so when you are, so we're working backwards from that. So you decide, okay, I'm gonna have a lead magnet. The lead magnet thank you page goes to where they can register for the webinar. And so in order to get people to my lead magnet, like sales page or opt-in page, that's where now all of your social networking and advertising and all those things that you're gonna do, those clouds that you drew up top, that's where those are gonna go to now. So there, you're gonna get people to opt in from there. You can also advertise directly to the webinar. Now, what if you are advertising and people don't opt in? Okay, so there's ways to do that also. You can, just for instance, you can do, put a pixel on the page that you are offering your lead magnet. So now when people go, they get a cookie set on their computer. So then you can follow them around with that cookie. And whether you're using AdWords or a Facebook or whatever it is that you're using for advertising and following, you could then turn around and advertise something else, or your next strategy, or exactly the webinar, or the lead magnet if you hadn't been doing that. So you can still get a hold of the audience and try to get them to opt into your list just by refollowing them from that pixel, right? So, okay, so now we've gone through, here's all the different ways people are gonna come in. I know I'm totally a hand talker here, I'm sorry. But here's all the ways that people are gonna come in. And I need a way that I'm gonna capture their information in a web form that we talked about. That web form is going to put people into my CRM. And from there, I'm either going to auto register or have people register for my webinar. So you already know what webinar software platform, whatever it is that you're going to use. So that CRM needs to talk to the webinar registration or vice versa. And making sure that whoever registers goes into your CRM, right? And then you need to send out reminders, and those can either come from your CRM, your email service, or most of the webinar service providers have emails that will send out automatically for reminders and follow-ups. So that's where you're just going to want to figure out, like, what are the options of the pieces, and how are they going to connect together in a way that makes sense. And so we're going to talk about that just a little bit more detail in the next step. But for this one, I just really, really want you to think, okay, if they don't do this, then what else can I do? And keep thinking, okay, then if they don't do that, then what else can I do? And if they don't do that, what else can I do? And keep reaching out until you've kind of filled your page with a bunch of if-then scenarios. So you've got upsells, you've got downsells, you've got different types of opt-ins, you've got different follow-ups. And this, I don't care. I know if you're just getting started, it may seem overwhelming, but this is the exact same process that any entrepreneur follows, because all it is, like, ultimately, we all have the same goals. We're all trying to get to sell something, right? We all have that same goal. It just starts, the way they get more complicated is all of the little loops and extra things that you're putting on that will add to your ultimate desire. So we're still focusing on trying to accomplish that goal, but we're looking at all the other possible scenarios of the ways that we can do that. Okay, so here we go. Step number 5. This is where we actually start assigning the technologies that are going to go with each one of the steps and the paths that you have outlined. So let's start with our example here. And in our example, I'm going to say that we are using Infusionsoft, and we're using the Infusionsoft e-commerce. And we're connecting Infusionsoft to, let's say, Zoom. So we're using Zoom for our webinar platform. And we're using, because those two softwares don't natively talk to each other, we are going to use plus this to connect the two pieces together. So on my roadmap, I'm going to start at the bottom, and on my sales goal, I'm going to say e-commerce, Infusionsoft. Okay? Backwards from that, all of our email delivery and communications that are happening, I say all of my emails are going to be delivered by Infusionsoft. Okay? Then, backwards from that, the webinar registration, the webinar follow-up, and how the webinar talks to our CRM system. So the webinar software, I'm going to put on my little webinar bubble. I'm going to write in Zoom, because that's my platform I'm going to use. And then I'm going to put Zoom, and I'm going to put connecting on the connecting lines that we're going to use plus this to connect Zoom to Infusionsoft. Okay, is this starting to make sense? And working backwards from that, we want to have an opt-in page. And let's go ahead and say that our opt-in page we're going to build using lead pages. So I'm going to put the lead page on my lead magnet and also on my webinar registration because I'm going to tie those together. So I know that lead pages is going to talk to Infusionsoft, and I'm going to put my webinar registration button or the link from Infusionsoft right on the landing page. So that's how those are going to connect together. And again, you'll see a little bit in the actual download piece that I give you. But really the point of this step is to go through and say, okay, for each of these, my yes path and my maybe paths, or my no back to yes paths, what are the softwares or the technologies or whatever it is that we're going to use? How do we connect those? What are we going to use for each one? And how do those connect back to the next pieces? And you will start to see, there's a ton of different options out there. Okay. So my advice is to start with, what are the pieces that you already have, that you already know how to use, okay? Then plug those in. And then look at what else is left. What else is left is probably, hopefully, going to be on your if possibility then. And so, you know, this is where you can look at, how can I accomplish that? Maybe I can use the same lead pages software over here. Or maybe I can do this with Infusionsoft. Or maybe I need something sort of new altogether to make this happen. And there are a million different ways to get from point A to point Z, I guarantee. But focus on the software tools that you already have and you already know how to use. And then secondly, the pieces that you know you can easily get help and support for. Or you already have a tech team ready that can implement or figure this out. And if you still have no idea where to go, here's my advice in order to be able to look for software. And we'll cover this more deeply in a future episode. But go through, post on Facebook groups, do just like 5-10 minutes worth of research online. I want to do this for my business. What do you recommend that I use to do it? Okay, you'll get tons of different answers. Pick the 3 most popular and spend 5 minutes each looking at the 3 most popular there. And then go look on Fiverr or Upwork or any of the other places that you might be able to look for help, and look and see what jobs like that are going for. Because you'll pretty quickly get an idea what it's going to take to be able to implement that, funds-wise and time-wise. So I always say don't spend more than 15 minutes spinning out on something, because here's the thing. Any of these technologies ultimately are still going to get you to your end goal. And that's what it's all about, right? The technologies that you use and the softwares that you use right now may not be the same softwares that you're using a year down the road, 3 years down the road. Chances are they're probably not. You're probably going to keep innovating and moving, right? So right now, what you need to do is whatever is going to get you to that finish line. That's the most important. That's why we wrote down our core goals first. So you are going to be able to go through and say, okay, I know I can use this. I know I can use this. If some of the periphery pieces you can't figure out what software or what technology needs to go, that's okay. You know what? You probably don't need to use it right now. You probably don't. And then in addition, as you are starting to map these things out, you may even discover that something that you had thought was going to be really difficult to set up on your yes-no path really can be done very easily with some of the technologies that you already have or that you're already going to be adding. So that part of your yes-no path really can get added pretty easily. So you're going to start seeing where, I promise, where technology can actually be your friend and actually help your business instead of hindering you by saying, I don't know what to do or how these pieces go together. Okay, so that's it. You're going to focus on looking at what are the technologies or software pieces or whatever it is that you're going to take to accomplish your core items and all of the extra little pieces, right? The alternate paths. And here's where you're going to discover maybe there's some awesome things that you can do that you didn't realize you could. And maybe there's some things that might not be so important to do right now. And another kind of super geek tip that you can do here during this time, depending on your CRM. So Infusionsoft uses tags, other CRMs use different lists or different ways of segmenting your people. So when you are identifying all of your alternate paths, there are some this is great ways that you can segment out your list for future information. So let's say that you're talking about your core offer here and one of your alternate lead magnet or opt-ins or things like that you offer, it doesn't specifically relate to your core offer, but maybe to another product that you offer. So if people opt in for that, you want to know that for the future for when you put together a sales opportunity that will be promoting that particular offer. So you want to pay attention to where people are at in your funnel and what segmenting that you can focus on so that it's going to help you in the future. Okay? That's a great super tip, and put all that out on your roadmap. And then this is the big dreaming one. This is the one that's going to take you the most time, I guarantee it. So that is all for step number 5. Okay, you made it. We are at tip number 6. And this one is where you are going to focus on the race. Okay, so you have gone from mapping out what your core function, all of the main core goals that you want, and then you have made craziness of your roadmap with all of the alternate routes that you can have. So here's where you're going to decide what are the things that are going to take too much time to accomplish, and what are the things that are going to take me out into the weeds and take me away from my core goal. So what you really want to look at here are what are the things that I can get done quickly and that are not going to detract from my super goals, your main goals, right? So if you are looking at right from the top, you have, okay, well, I can give them this lead magnet. If they don't take that one, then I'm going to pixel retarget them to this lead magnet. And then if they take that, then I want to send them this different email follow-up series and roundabout bring them back to my webinar. But then that's a whole other 10 more emails that you have to write and another segmenting, and maybe that's not what you want to do right now. Maybe writing is your focus. And so you can bang out a whole bunch of emails really quickly. Okay, so then maybe you want to just send them a bunch of email information and not follow up with a webinar replay or not break your webinar down into different video pieces. Instead, you just want to write that information. So as you're going through and looking at what are your if-then pieces, here's where, and what I like to do is take a highlighter and kind of start color coding. These are the pieces that I know I can get done right now that are not going to slow me down to my ultimate goal of selling my product and building my list, that these core pieces I can get done with these extra add-ons that are going to add to it, okay? Then get that done, get that out, get it moving, because I guarantee that the first time through, especially if this is a new process, the first time through, you're going to have customers that are going to come back. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to have, you'll start building a frequently asked questions. Maybe your offer needs to change. Maybe your lead magnet needs to change. You will find out from what your customers are telling you and sharing with you and sharing on social media and wherever you're asking for feedback. You will find out what are the things that you need to tweak. And when you go back and tweak, you'll be able to look at your roadmap and go, oh yeah, that piece right there would probably work. Or I can take this piece right here and just modify the messaging a little bit and add that in. And that's going to answer this main question that I keep getting. So this is the process that all of the great entrepreneurs do. I guarantee it. It's just adding complexity onto your funnel. So you're going to go through what's the simplest way that you can get through it the first time. And then how well did it work? Where were the hangups? What are the things that you need to change? And you're going to go back and start adding in some of those different complexity levels. You're going to start putting those other pieces in. And before you know it, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you have that entire roadmap funnel that looked like a hot mess to start with. That's the piece that you are going to have implemented in your business. And you're doing it in a way that's not slowing you down and not tripping you up with technologies. You're getting the help that you need and you're making it happen fast, all the while making money. So that's exactly what we want to do. That is how you can map it out yourself and follow that path to success. We're going to put you in that car. You're going to get around the track to the finish line, and you're going to keep starting and keep going around and keep collecting cash all the time while you're going. So that is it, my friends. That is my 6 tips. Make sure that you go visit on the website. You can download that. You can download our other roadmaps just for some extra ideas. And watch for episode number 2 coming up next week. Will be delivered on Fridays. Until then, keep on teching.
Thanks so much for listening to Technology Road Mapping with your host, Jennifer Neal. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit formuladone.com, formuladone.com/roadmap, and on Twitter and Facebook @formuladone. We'll catch you next time.